I recorded a math rock band inside of a concrete converted garage with like zero room treatment. I dug up the tracks and we're going to take a listen, but it's funny. It shouldn't have sounded good, but it kind of did. Back in 2011, I played drums for this band called The Simple Pages. And one of the things that we really liked to do was to go out into our local music scene and support a lot of the other acts that were around at the time, which, by the way, side note, we need to do that. We need to do that more. Because if the scene dies, everything dies. So, but one day he came up to me and he was like, yeah, you got to come check out this band. They're like kids. They're like 16 or 17 years old, and I don't even comprehend what they're playing. And I was like, I'm intrigued. Let's go check them out. So we drove out to Fort Worth, Texas, to this place called 1919 Hemp Hill. And I'm going to use the term venue very loosely because this looked like a condemned building. It was like a DIY punk venue. And I remember downstairs they had like a food pantry and like a whole bunch of clothing and stuff. And like while I was waiting for the show to start upstairs, I saw this like homeless guy walk through. And he like picked up a jacket and he put it on and then he just walked out. I love punk communities because of how much they want to take care of their community. But anyway, so the show starts upstairs and these kids take the stage and my mind was blown. Like, it was one of those things. I love music with intensity and passion, right? If you couldn't tell. And they were one of these bands that, like, they forced you to feel what they felt. And, like, during the show, I got all these goosebumps, and I was like, oh, my God, I can't wait to talk to these kids after the show. So I go up to them, and I'm like, hey, do you guys have a record? And they were like, we recorded a demo at, like, our friend's dad's house, and it's on YouTube. And I was like, great. I run a record label. I didn't run a record label. And I would love to put out your band's record. And their response was, sick. Let's do it. And then I had to figure out how to record this band's record. One of my favorite pieces of like music world advice that I ever got was from my Audio 201 teacher. And he said, always say yes first, then figure out how you're going to do it. Which I'll agree. I think that's great advice. And this is actually kind of a prime example of that because I didn't have a record label. I didn't have a recording studio. What I had was a FirePod and a handful of really inexpensive microphones. And the room that we were recording in was actually our guitar player's parents' house. They had this converted garage into like this like rumpus room. Worst case scenario as far as recording goes, though, like concrete floors, drywall on the walls, a couple of windows. Every single surface was really reflective. Like I said, worst case scenario for recording. So we worked with what we had. We moved the couch, which was over towards the wall. We kind of moved that towards the center of the room to help to break up the reflections as much as possible. And then we would occasionally put like a mic stand up in the shape of like a T, and then we would drape blankets, like sound blankets over that. That'll do a little bit, but it's not a lot. And then we moved the drum kit around in the room until we found the least problematic spot. Not the best sounding spot, but the least problematic. I need to be very specific about those words. For microphones, this is what we had. We used a pair of NT1As for the overheads. I had an SM57 on the snare, like snare top. I had like those little cheap PG56 Shure mics as like clip-ons for the toms. The most expensive microphone I had was an Audix D6 on the kick, which is still one of my all-time favorite like kick mics. And I put a Shure KSM27 on the outside kick. That's how we recorded the drums. When it came to guitars, which is really funny, we actually had access to these amazing guitar amps, like a really cool like AC30. We had this really awesome like vintage Marshall JMP. We didn't use that. We used Parker's amp that he got at like a pawn shop, which was like the brand was a Bogan, if memory serves. And it was really intended as a PA, but he had it like modified and rewired to be a guitar amp head. And then we just kind of cranked it up to get a little sizzle out of it and then recorded that into like a cab that we had lying around. For the mics, we used the SM57, just kind of recycled from the drum session. And then I had this old like Electro Voice dynamic microphone for like the room. And this is what that sounded like. It's a 9 for million. Yeah, I get these comments on my videos sometimes, and it's a lot of people who are going to say, like, you know, the performance is the most important thing in a recording. I agree entirely with that. But then right below performance, I've seen a lot of people put room treatment. I disagree with that. I wouldn't put it there. I think that's overhyping it a little. And here's what I mean. Like, number one, what do you mean by room treatment? We'll get to that. Number two, we are not acousticians. We are not in $1 million spaces. Like, put down the calculator. It's okay. We're all working in bedrooms, in basements, in living rooms, and things like that. We all have a pretty similar list of problems that we'll be dealing with in these spaces. But I can tell you right now, it's not nearly as bad as those comments make it out to seem like it will be. It's not just going to be this massacre of reflections and phase cancellation and comb filtering. Don't get me wrong. Room treatment is nice. You can see my panels that I've got in here. It helps, but it's not everything. What you need to keep in mind is a couple of core principles, and then to understand your microphones and how they can work with you or against you in certain circumstances. So let's go through that real quick. If this is what you mean by acoustic treatment, stop calling that acoustic treatment. That is decoration. That's what that is. These little foam wedges, they don't absorb all frequencies. They actually only absorb like the high frequency stuff. And truth be told, if you have a room that's made up of nothing but that, it's going to lead to a lot of boominess, a lot of bass frequency buildup. These don't absorb any low frequencies. It's all high frequencies. That can contribute to just as many problems. In fact, Greasy Will of TikTok fame, also footnote, he also won a Grammy. He famously said that these are the audio equivalent of seeing that like old Honda Civic with like a huge like spoiler on the back of it. Like no one takes it seriously. I always thought that was really funny. Now this is an actual acoustic panel. I build these myself. I will make a video of like a tutorial of how I make these. It's just like some sort of insulation. I use this stuff called acoustic cotton. I build a frame around it and then I cover it in fabric and that's it. This absorbs all frequencies across the spectrum and it really helps to tame a lot of problems in a room. If this is what you have, this is acoustic treatment. And the thing that I love about recording is that it's this gigantic puzzle. Like it's this game of chess, this push and pull of like using the tools that you have at your disposal, applying some basic principles, and then just some creative problem solving to just round it all out. I love that type of stuff because if you're in a challenging space like a square or rectangular room, which chances are you are, just apply a couple of these principles. Avoid the windows. Avoid the corner of the room. Avoid the dead center of the room. If you can do that and then move around the room, listening to yourself talk and thinking about what a microphone would pick up, start to think about that. And then last but not least, also think about the mic and the placement because microphones, especially cardioid microphones like this, they're only going to pick up what you point them at, and they are going to do a decent job of rejecting everything else. This is massively important, especially when you're recording drums. Don't think about what you're pointing the microphone at. also think about what you're rejecting at that same time. Do you have a wall that's giving you some crazy reflections? Is there a way for your microphone position to reject those reflections? Probably so, to at least make things better, right? As long as you can do that, just have fun with it. Just move around some microphones, have intent with the sound that you're going for, and lean into the creative problem solving. I feel like there's so much more that I could speak to in regards to releasing this record. That's gonna be another story for another time for sure, but like, look how cool that is. So we had no money, right? So we put these in like these brown craft paper like inserts because we didn't want to buy jewel cases. And then we sealed it with this like hot wax and then like stamped it, like hand stamped everything. I remember the late night that we spent literally doing that to hundreds of copies of that CD. Anywho, if you like this video, I need you to do me a favor and hit some buttons that are down here. I want you to hit the like if you like this video. I want you to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I've got a lot of videos that are coming up that I'm really excited for you guys to see. So I'll see you in the next one.